Welcome back. Today we'll be talking to great people that build great businesses. And I'm thrilled today to be joined by our very own Sean Sankey. Welcome, Sean.
Nice to be back. Love it.
Sean, just for the audience, if you'd be so kind just to intro yourself quickly.
Done a bunch of stuff with you over the years. But obviously last year we went live with the executive development offer that we have for a bunch of different clients that we're working with. So I do a lot of work with top teams, helping them across a bunch of different things: conflict resolution, exec development, performance management, talent improvement, all that kind of stuff. And here to talk about some of the things we've learned over the last 12 months.
We work with a lot of different clients, across a lot of different industries. What's kind of bubbling up as some of the kind of key themes, the real issues at a senior level?
I like to tell stories and talk about actual things that are happening. And it just occurred to me a couple of days ago that 3 big engagements that we've had pretty much have had the same spine, the same theme running through them. Big agricultural manufacturer getting us in to help internal teams be able to communicate in a more compelling way, right? Whether that's taking auditors through a deck, whether that is presenting to internal leadership, not necessarily pitching for business. This isn't salespeople. This is internal teams helping them land messages more effectively. So big retailer helping internal teams come up with innovative ideas for improvement and then pitch that to global CEO. And a big food producer where the top team is just embroiled in misunderstanding and conflict. For me, the thread across those is, how do you help senior people, very capable people, strengthen their voice? Like, talk to each other in a way which lands and develop the confidence and skill to really make a message count when the stakes are high. The nature of it shifts in each setting, but effectively that's the brief. And it's just been really interesting to see how that's shown up in context after context.
How much of that is amateur psychology in how you deliver the actual message, or how you're coaching said individuals?
I would say that it's a mix of confidence and skill.
Okay.
Right. So yes, there is the emotional side of staying regulated and intentional when you're in what I call a high stakes moment. Now, a high stakes moment could be you're pitching to the CEO. Or you're on stage and you're delivering a presentation at a conference, right? That's high stakes because for all the reasons that we'll all be familiar with. Nobody likes really getting up and doing public speaking and feeling exposed. But there's the other high stakes moments of when you know you're going into a meeting and you're 100% sure that everyone's going to disagree.
Right, okay.
Or you're going into a session where you know you're going to be under fire for the performance of your team. How do you communicate in those high stakes moments? Well, it takes confidence. And it helps if you've got a bit of skill. The coaching that we're given to folk across these different contexts is, what are the ingredients of you showing up with confidence? And that does lend on a little bit of psychology. That's a little bit of what we know about the brain and how the nervous system works. So that's pretty intense coaching stuff. But then there just are ways of crafting a message, of landing it well, of speaking in a way which lands with an audience. And that's more of a skill. So it's those twin pillars that we find ourselves moving on in all these different contexts.
And when, not just with us, but you've been doing this a long time now, how often is it a case of you're brought in when it's really hit the fan? And how often are people a little bit more, there's a bit more foresight?
No, I love that. It's a great question. I think it's 50-50.
Okay.
And I think you do get enlightened buyers. You get leaders who can see it's better to solve the problem before it arrives, or it's better to kill the monster whilst it's a baby. Pick your metaphor of choice. You do get leaders that want to invest in their teams and have the foresight to go, if we can initiate conflict before we have to resolve conflict, if we can equip people to be confident on stage before they've had 3 train wrecks. If we can do that, everyone wins, right? So we do have those engagements like that. There are horror stories, and we've worked on a bunch of these projects this year where actually a team is in crisis, where things have broken down. Someone's had a disaster in a high profile meeting or setting. And you have to do the repairing after the fact. Both are valuable. Obviously, I think this one where you're being proactive is an investment, is thinking ahead. But I think it's in terms of both the financial cost and the human cost, it's probably less to prevent something than it is to clean it up.
I'm just thinking as well, when you think about boards, they need diversity, right? A board isn't always great when everyone just agrees. So we have to encourage conflict, right?
Usually.
But that would stem into the communication piece of how, because otherwise everyone has the same blind spot, right? If everyone just sits there and agrees. I remember one of my first ever board meetings, I sat there and I was like, wow, this is controversial. I thought you guys got along. And by the time you stood up, you shook hands and you changed a couple of opinions. And it wasn't necessarily who got the loudest voice, but it intrigued me massively how these things actually happen. It's a good thing that not everyone's just sat there agreeing.
100%.
Otherwise, we don't get to the roots of the problems. We spoke a lot about kind of the top themes or things that are happening a lot at the minute, but why is communication training proving so popular right now?
So myself and Mark, who I think has been on the podcast before as well, his colleague who works with us on a bunch of these projects, we were chatting about this over breakfast the other day, about how with the return to the office, but with this strange in-between place that a lot of companies find themselves in, where we're more distributed, we're more all over the place than we've been before physically. We have this hybrid working of, I'm doing Teams calls, I work on my own things at home a lot, and then in the office. The skills of communication and being able to land messages well and get along with difficult and different people, they used to come along before COVID. They used to be developed by just rubbing shoulders in the office and observing and seeing how conflict was resolved, how people presented, how, those who are in front of you. It was like learning by osmosis. There's less of that now. There's less of that. And I think that, that is a factor. That is a factor. That's just a feature of the modern workplace. Now, that's not every workplace, we shouldn't generalize, but that is a feature, I think, where people are seeing a degradation over time of people's ability to interact with different audiences, right? The other thing is, I think, as people are coming up through organizations, actually it's not straightforward, but people can acquire the technical side of their role, with AI, with kind of hard skills training that we have, with all of the programs that now exist in the sector, giving that kind of training and that kind of skills development, that's speeding up. But the human skills, and particularly the skills that matter in high stakes situations, how do I disagree with someone well? How do we resolve something where there is no right answer, there's just perspectives? That kind of stuff is much more difficult to train and it takes longer. That's why folk are leaning into seeing, well, okay, how do we solve for that? Because if you rated the technical stuff, but you get the interpersonal communication, working together thing wrong, well, that has real consequences and costs, which I think people are discovering, all right, well, we need to solve that again more upstream and kill the monster while it's a baby.
How much of it is, I'm genuinely curious about this, where people are positioning opinions as facts and being able to dissect between the two?
It's like a training we had last week. So one of the things that we were talking about is that it's rare that you'll persuade somebody with your version of what you think a solution is. If you can package your idea in a way which feels really relevant to the audience and comes across in such a way where they can get on board with it, and it doesn't just feel like it's your thing, then actually you're not persuading anymore, you're just removing friction to them buying into it. Right?
Not closing all the time.
Not closing it. You don't have to close. It doesn't have to be, I'm pushing this on you, whether it's a sale or whether it's an internal idea. You are literally just removing the barriers to people getting on board with what you think makes sense anyway. And as you do presentations like that, as you have meetings like that, actually people feel much freer to engage in and chuck their own thoughts in, and you end up getting better ideas anyway. So helping people be less attached to their idea of this fix for this operational process, which investment we should make here, how do we fix that plant issue, whatever it is. If you can get people to detach from it in such a way where they can have a bit of openness and engage their colleagues in, well, okay, this is where I start. Here's why I think it's great. What do you think? What do you think? And have the confidence and groundedness in that. I think they're the most effective communicators that I'm coming across.
Let's talk about talent and performance. 9-box models are popping up across different clients.
Yeah.
But what are we learning about how they're best used? Because everyone's got a version of it. Everyone's trying to jump on the bandwagon. I'm not saying it's new. It's been there a very long time. But how are they best used?
The interesting thing about performance frameworks, so we've got a couple of clients where we're helping them think this through. Particularly in our sector, I think there is reluctance, skepticism to putting people in boxes, right? Yeah. It doesn't feel like a very humane thing to do. And as soon as you start doing your research in this stuff, you'll find very clear case studies and horror stories as to, well, Microsoft tried it and they binned it. Deloitte killed off any kind of formal annual performance assessment because they found it was more about manager competence than it was about individual performance. Okay. You know, there's case study like GE, were relentless on assessing people, put them into frameworks, and then binned it after a while. So people will be skeptical and they will have evidence for it. What flies under the radar is there's also lots of examples where tools like 9 boxes and bridge curves have been used really well, but you never hear about those because they're not as sensational and sexy and, oh gosh, they've changed the perspective. So you could talk about Unilever, you could talk about Siemens, we could talk about lots and lots of different places where it has worked well. The key point I'm trying to make is that it's like so many things. It's not the tool, it's how it's used. If these clients can adopt a 9-box model and use it in a way which fits their culture and fits their aims around, well, first of all, we've got a problem that we don't know where our talent is. We're a big organization. We don't really have visibility across the complexity of how we're organized now to know, right, we've got a high performer here, we've got someone that needs development there. It's all hidden in individual business units. Also, we've got the problem of, well, are we giving, our workforce a fair crack at the whip in terms of offering similar development opportunities to everybody? What's our way of assuring ourselves that we're having meaningful conversations with staff and it isn't just reliant on one manager being great? They're valid problems. And if a 9-box helps you do that, which I think it can in a lot of different settings, if it's used in the right way, and it's not this stick to beat people with, and it's not a label that you carry around for the whole of your career. This is a snapshot in time. And the key thing actually isn't about the output of the box assessment. The key thing is the progression plan, right? If people are still talking about the box and the placement, a month afterwards, we've lost. If people are talking about the progression plan, and what the box led to. Okay, great. So I'm now in that box. Okay, well, fab. Well, for the next 6 months, here's the markers that you need to hit. Here's the projects I want you involved on. Here's the mentoring we're going to give you. And this is where I see you being in a year, 2 years from now, right? And that progression plan is real and believable. If that's where we end up, then the 9-box is just the thing that help us got to the thing that really matters. Yeah. And I think that's what a lot of organizations need to catch about any kind of talent development or performance improvement is where do you put the emphasis and what do you center the conversation on?
It's a stigma of where one is put, who's put them there, the rationale behind it, and looking at it in a defeatist manner rather than this is all about the future. This is all about and if anything, it's all about the leaders and the companies holding themselves accountable. And it's those individuals will need to look at themselves 6 months down the line if said individual hasn't moved boxes, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the way we're looking at it.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're supporting somebody do is to go, right, you do your assessments, but then what's the check-in back on that, in cycles, because it's the cycles of improvement and the cycles of progression that actually keep talent around. When they can see themselves progressing and when there's a culture where everyone can see each other moving on in their careers, not necessarily upwards, could be lateral moves, can be going on to different projects and different business units or whatever. But if people can see movement, that's the sign of a healthy business. Yeah. If a movement is hidden or there is no movement, you've become stagnant. So I think what we're seeing with talent frameworks, 9-box or otherwise, is they're a vehicle for creating the right movements to keep the right people in the industry. And gosh, do we need that right now?
Yeah, that's something that we need to be utilising and using to the best of its ability as well moving forward. But I could talk all day, Sean, but it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
No, this has been great. Thank you.
Cheers. Take care.